Call meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Goff.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Larkey.
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Powell.
Here.
Councilmember Pryan. Councilmember Kraft.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
We have a quorum. Personal appearances, none. Ordinances.
A motion approving the final reading of bill number 2022-62.
An ordinance approving the petition to remove property from the Grand Hill Community Improvement District.
Present. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lawson.
Aye.
Goff.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
And Mayor Larkey has abstained.
Motion carries.
Item B, motion approving final reading of bill 2022-63.
An ordinance approving the petition to add property to the Southview Commerce Center Community Improvement District.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Goff.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Lawson.
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. C, motion approving the final reading of bill 2022-64.
An ordinance approving the amended and restated cooperative agreement among the City of Belton, Missouri, Southview Commerce Center Community Improvement District, and MP Southview Industrial, Inc.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye.
Councilmember Goff.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Lawson.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
Motion carries. D, motion approving final reading of bill 2022-65.
An ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding between the North Cast Waste Management Sewer District and the City of Belton, Missouri, to connect the district to Belton's wastewater treatment facility.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I mean, what is North Cass Waste Management Sewer District? Is that something made up, or is that,
No, it's real.
okay.
It's a rural sewer district there at 187.
Oh, is that their sewer
Mul-
district?
Mul-
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmember Lawson.
Aye.
Goff.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. E, motion approving the first reading of bill 2022-66.
An ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 4 of the Code of Ordinances, enacting new guidelines relating to the city's personnel code and adopting the City of Belton personnel policy.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This where we talk about,
Go ahead, yeah.
is this where we talk about postponing?
If you want, that's what you want to do, yes.
I wouldn't mind postponing, so that way we can discuss this a little bit further. There's some changes I'm not sure about.
I agree with Councilmember White. I thought we were going to bring this up in a work session before we brought it to the council so we can look at the policy over the weekend. And and just talk more about it.
Councilman
And
Goff.
I agree that I've been trying to absorb it all in between running here and there, and there's a lot in there, and there's some things that I caught that I have a lot of questions about that I would like to be able to talk about it at some point before just approving it.
Anybody else?
Is that an official motion to postpone?
That sounds good to me.
I'll make a second. I like that.
Do
To
we have
which
a,
meeting? Sorry.
yeah, which date is the council looking to postpone this to?
Well, when's our next meeting?
I don't know.
The next meeting is December 13th. And that is the last meeting of the year as well.
I'd go to the first meeting in January.
Go into January.
So would that be a motion postponing the first reading of bill number 2022-66 until the January 10th meeting of the Belton City Council?
Brett White, that's your,
That would allow us to have the next meeting to discuss it.
well, that gives us the next meeting and have it on a work session.
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's your motion, you're good?
Oh, yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'll second your amendment.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to postpone till January the 10th, but bring it back at a work session on December the 13th.
I do want to say that there's a lot of things in here that I liked the way it was written, but there's some just questions I have.
Is that correct? We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the motion to postpone? Hearing none. Roll call.
All in favor?
Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. F, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-67.
An ordinance approving the 2023 intergovernmental agreement with the Mid-America Regional Council Solid Waste Management District for participation in the Regional Household Hazardous Waste Program.
Present.
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds. Any discussion? Any information?
This is an annual event. Is it in Belton this year, or is it?
I think it was,
I believe it's in Belton this year.
And are we doing it at the high school again? Or do you have that,
just do it here in July? No, that was the other.
the
thing.
electronic?
Yeah, that was electronic thing, huh? Sorry.
Well, this also allows us to go to the Lee Summit or the Kansas City places on our own for free, right? At any time.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolutions, motion approving resolution R22-118.
A resolution creating a tourism council for the purpose of promoting tourism and travel to the city of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I guess, I thought Carolyn looked like she's getting ready to talk, so I'm waiting for her to.
Go ahead.
I do have just a couple of
ahead.
items. So as the city clerk mentioned, this is to create a tourism council for the city of Belton. Just to provide a little bit of background, the council will consist of 4 permanent seats with a representative from the Belton Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Belton Main Street Group, Eagles Landing Golf Course, and Belton Parks and Rec. Those will all be permanent. There will also be representation from large and small restaurants and retailers, the hotel industry. There'll be a city council liaison and citizens who are active in tourism in our community. Additionally, the city manager and the economic development director will be ex officio members. And the council for tourism, the council of tourism consists of tourism asset owners and operators within our city, and excited to get everybody together to work collectively towards generating visits and tourism to the city of Belton.
Go ahead.
So I guess my question to you is, how do we track all that, or is it just when we have events and we know people show up? I know like with, organized sports, we have like hotels, B&Us and stuff. I'm just trying to see how we're gonna track this in the future.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go
let me answer some of that for you. What the intention of this council is to do is to allow us to better track that stuff and be
Okay.
more intentional in what we're doing with our tourism efforts as a community. Right now, we don't really have anything other than we have the bed tax, and that's, I mean, we can track that. But other than that, we have no real way of measuring how effective our tourism efforts are. We don't really have a collective unit working toward maximizing our current assets, trying to recruit and create new assets. That type of that's what this council is supposed to attack essentially. And so it's just providing intentionality into our tourism sector, which I don't think we've, just as a community, I'm not sure we've had a good collective effort to address that. And this is attempting to do so.
So I guess my next question is, how much money are we gonna allow in a budget for something like that, for advertising and marketing for?
Well, right now we don't have any money in the budget for it.
I know
so
that, that's what I mean.
I don't know that we're going to do. Well, that's at some point we will have to have that conversation as a budgeting piece. If we decide to put money toward this, at this point it's just a strategic group. But if we decide to be even more intentional in trying to invest in certain, whether it's marketing efforts or whatever, then that will require some budgetary consideration, and of course that would come before the council before to approve. And I'd prefer that we do that as part of our budgeting effort every year as a city, and so that way the intentionality is there as well.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm wholeheartedly behind this. And also, a couple of weeks ago, we went to Excelsior Springs. They had a wine party on the whole downtown. It was called Which Way to the Wine. A lot of women and men dressed as witches. But anyway, they had something called Placer.ai. It's a group. I guess you've got to hire them. But they came back and they knew exactly how many people went to every single business, how much wine they drank, what they spent. They knew that 2 people came from Texas. That was me and my wife, because we still have our 713 area codes. But anyway, there are ways to do that. And I think you also need people, not just a program, to come up with ideas too. So I think it's a good idea.
Anybody else? I agree with this. I think it's an excellent, I mean, city manager's been talking about this for some time, so I think it's an excellent thing for the city, so I'm 100% in support of it. Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry, any opposed? Motion carries. B, motion approving resolution R 22-119.
A resolution approving task agreement 2022-5 with Leith & Sons Incorporated for the Belmo Drive Water Main Replacement Project in the not-to-exceed amount of $314,447.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion in 3 seconds.
3 seconds, yeah.
Any discussion?
Can you refresh my memory on this?
So this is just a water main project that we're doing on Belmo. Belmo is a street that just goes up about 5 houses across and back down. We're actually it's in our schedule to overlay it, and it's also on our plan to replace the water line for cast iron lines. And so this is getting the cast iron line replaced before we pave the street.
Anybody else?
Isn't there also something for Spring and, what's the other name?
Lynn.
Starts with an L,
Right.
Lynn, yeah.
Lynn.
So there's 2 more streets that fall in that same category. We're actually doing our water pressure study. Spring has multiple water lines on it, and that comes from when there used to be a water tower behind City Hall here.
Uh-huh.
And so we're redoing that study. Once we know what the size of those lines need to be, then we'll be working on those projects too.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda, 1 motion non-available to approve recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. City Council liaison reports.
I'll give the Parks update. Thanks for everybody who came out to the Veterans Day Parade this last Saturday. The weather wasn't great, but that was a really cool event. The Holiday Craft Fair is coming up Saturday, November 19th at High Blue. There'll be 40-plus vendors, and this is a well-attended and looked forward to annual event. There are still spots left for youth winter basketball signups, and that's all I have.
Anybody else?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I would say that we had a event thing at the winery this last Saturday, and it was well attended, and we had a lot of people there that came from Belton High School that said that Belton had a fantastic one going on over there at the high school on Saturday. So there's a lot of events going on right now, and
I think
this
the
one.
big craft fair was this last weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at the school.
Yeah, is that, I think the chamber puts that one on.
Chamber sponsored,
Yep.
yeah.
So the Parks Department's,
They
theirs
must
is the
have been
19th.
Awful successful because I heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
So. Any other council communication?
I'll just say one thing.
Go ahead.
Codes Enforcement Advisory Council's going to have an introductory meeting on this Thursday evening, but also compliments to the Codes group that they've got on the website an actual link to where the code enforcement issues are, what have they been resolved, where they stand and being resolved, etc. So you guys probably all know about it, but for anybody listening outside, you can now see if you are concerned about something in your neighborhood, you can see how it's proceeding.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee met last Thursday. We do this twice a year. We review the revenues and expenditures out of that fund. And then we're supposed to write an annual report, but we've just been doing it after every meeting. So if anybody wants to watch the meeting, that is not recorded. Let me back that up. We will have a report written up soon to share, and it'll be on the city website. And these are twice a year, so the next one's in April.
Go ahead.
I would like to challenge City Council for a canned food drive to help support Belton Welfare Association for the canned food between the wards. It will be each ward against each other to see who can collect the most canned foods. The rule is that you can only collect in your own ward. Everyone accept the challenge.
Who do I get to help?
You're in
Ward
Ward 3.
I'm going to the highest bidder.
We have the fire station and the police department in Ward 1, so you want to be on Ward 1.
That sounds good. I like it.
Do we
So,
actually have them in our ward? I don't think they're in our ward.
Starting today.
Go ahead, if you guys want to. Sounds good to me.
The cutoff,
Oh, the cutoff will be November 26th, the day of the mayor's Christmas tree lighting, that night at 6 o'clock.
On your own.
Ah. But we got both the grocery stores, so. Or all three, really.
All right, sounds good.
Just hit them up.
That's all right. That's all you got to do. Dented
But-
cans,
See,
whatever.
I'm gonna be gone most of the time.
Oh,
So.
wow. Okay. Well,
Anybody else?
I'll help get my dog to help.
Only thing I got, he mentioned that Mayor's Christmas trees, November the 26th. The Christmas parade starts at 5:30, and the tree lighting will be like 2 minutes or 3 minutes after everybody gets down from the parade, unlike last year where we waited too long and everybody left. So we changed our schedule, and it'll be immediately after the parade. So that's Saturday, November 26th. The group has asked the council to buy the hot dogs and buns. I think you've got an email about that, so if you can donate to this fund, and I'm gonna buy the water for everybody, so give your money to the city clerk if you can. Other thing I got is not last week, but the week before, I went to the loggers meeting down in Springfield. A little bit out of that, our money is good. We're 96, 97% funded in loggers. So that's a great number, one of the top 10 plans in the nation for funding. A couple things out of that. They added I guess I probably should talk to you about this first, but anyway, I'm gonna say it. They've added, our employees are put into loggers groups, general employees, police, and fire. They've actually created a new public safety group, which what that does is it allows our dispatchers and our jailers to be able to retire at 55 instead of 60. There will be a cost to this if we so chose to do it, so that's a new option in loggers, so I just wanted to report that. So that's all I have.
Hasn't
Go ahead.
the dispatchers and jailers been trying to get put down as, not just in loggers, but I think in general as underneath the emergency personnel?
There's been groups in the state trying to get this done for
Right.
years and years, and it finally got done in the last legislative session, so.
Cool.
But like I said, there will be a cost if we so chose to go that direction, so that's something we can look at, so. Anybody else? That's all I have. Go ahead.
All right, I don't have a whole lot. I know last meeting when I was not here, the new HR director was mentioned. Carla Wallen is here today. She's doing a great job. She's hit the ground running. She's already looking into a lot of different policies that we have. She's working on pay issues, benefits issues, and already even getting involved in some legitimate HR personnel issues that are being brought to her already. And so she's just doing a fantastic job. I wanted to point that out to everybody, and we're proud to have her back over here. And so, other than that, we did Midwest Public Risk Conference was recently, since the last meeting. We had a number of folks that attended that, and it was a solid conference. It's probably better for networking than it is for the seminars, but the sessions weren't bad either. There were some, I think everybody got a little bit out of that at least. And so that was about a week and a half ago. And we're in the middle of budget season. You guys know that already. We've already had our ward meetings. Those were very productive. And we're working through the staff portions of that. And we'll have, obviously, the special meeting that we're planning to do on November 29th to discuss budgeting, CIP, capital improvement plan. We'll be ready for you guys on that. So that's all I have.
All right, items for review and discussion. Item A, 2024 comprehensive plan presented by Matt Wright.
Yep. As I believe everybody on council is aware of, our comprehensive plan was last adopted in 1992. And the last amendment that was made was to the future land use map back in 2014. So we have quite a dated comprehensive plan. And due to the development trends that have changed significantly over the past 30 years, as well as the potential for continued growth in the community, the comprehensive plan is in need of a complete update to guide development over the next 15 to 20 years. Over the past several months, staff has been compiling comprehensive plans from around the country, as well as utilizing professional publications from the American Planning Association to pull together a list of key components, which are on the screen, and Jenna will go through in a little bit more detail here in a minute. The comprehensive plan drafting and approval process is expected to take approximately a year to complete, and staff is proposing to begin that process in spring of 2023 with a completion goal of mid-2024. Staff has put together an estimated budget based on the key components and the resources that are needed to complete each of the tasks over that 12-month period. Based on the projection, staff is proposing to request $200,000 for the fiscal year 2024 budget for the completion of the comprehensive plan update, and that would be included as part of the capital improvements program budget. An RFP process is required to select a team of consultants to complete the update, which staff will oversee. So I'm going to turn over the presentation to Jenna Baker, our city planner, who has put the presentation together to discuss the 9 key components that are included in the comprehensive plan.
Make sure this is on. So before I dive too deep into these different chapters, each slide or page that you have is broken up into a couple different sections. So you're going to have a summary with some background information that dives a little bit deeper into each chapter. And then we have a chapter contents, which could be perceived as deliverables for each section or the contents that will actually exist in these chapters. And then we have a why is this important section at the bottom that kind of describes why we think all of these components are essential. And then on the right, we have a couple of examples that we've included from other comprehensive plans that have done these different areas really well. So you could follow up the links or the sources are on there if you wanted to follow up and look at these different comp plans. So the first chapter is visioning and goals, and obviously that is very essential to a comprehensive plan. And this would include a foundational goal framework, which would allow us to have a implementable plan that looked at a strategic action plan that breaks out goal by goal and action item by action item, how we might meet our goals and vision for the future. And the vision is really synthesized from all of the public engagement that is done all the way through the project. So this is how we get to our complete vision at the end of the day. So the community profile is super important for all departments in the city. It allows us to dive deeper into a comprehensive demographic assessment of who lives in Belton, where do they live, and what are their needs. And we'll be able to look at trends and projections on population, age, race, income, and things like that. So that will give us a great baseline for all of our planning efforts in the future. Community engagement, this is not just going to be a chapter in the comprehensive plan, but it'll happen all the way throughout the entire year of the project. A great comprehensive plan comes from great public engagement. So we're really looking at trying to do online, in-person, and physical means of engagement. So that is workshops, pop-up meetings, online mapping, and commenting tools. This also includes an ETC survey, which is a statistically valid survey, which will allow us to really benchmark where we are and what people really want to see in the future. Land use becomes kind of the meat of the comprehensive plan. This is where we start to look at different design elements, urban design elements of the city of Belton. And we're proposing to look at different character areas that include the downtown area, different neighborhoods or corridors that allow us to really get into the urban design elements or specific policies or community character of each of those different types of places. This would include an illustrated land use guide, which will allow the community to really get into what do these different land use types look like, what does that mean for my neighborhood, and what does that mean for the city as a whole. This is where your future land use map would reside, as well as including some UDC updates. So the economic development section of the comp plan will be really key for us because we're looking to try to get a economic and market analysis in this comprehensive plan effort, which will really let us dive deep into the assessed tax value of different properties, where we might need to expand different market areas, and also have a needs assessment of where we are currently and what does our market look like. The transportation section is pretty typical in a comprehensive plan, and this is where we would look at a needs assessment in terms of our overall city connectivity and include a mobility plan and trails plan that would allow us to cohesively move towards better connectivity and mobility as a whole. This also includes a master street plan for road extensions or changes. We're also proposing to look at some complete street policies and what that might look like in the future, and including some typology indexes, which allow us to show different road types and what that means for the pedestrian and road users. Housing is a big topic for Belton, obviously, and so this section is where we're going to dive deep into what our current needs assessment is. What housing types do we currently have in our housing stock? Where do we need different types of housing? And really looking at how we might meet that in the future, and really striving towards the life cycle of housing. So we have all those different housing types going forward. We're also proposing to look at trends and projections in our housing market and addressing homelessness and social services as well. Infrastructure and utilities. We'll be looking at our needs assessment in terms of what we currently have in water usage and wastewater services, in our water quality, and how we might need to expand in the future. And this includes community facilities or public facilities, community centers, and things like that. And finally, parks and open space. Parks are considered one of the biggest assets for cities typically. So going into parks expansion and what that looks like for the city of Belton 20 years from now, we'll be looking at our current parks level of service, how many parks we have, what do they offer, and we're proposing to include a greenway and riparian corridor conservation plan because the city of Belton has a lot of stormwater issues, and we would like to look at that specifically. In this section would also address community character and placemaking, gateway signage, and identifying different neighborhoods and trying to bring some of that unique Belton character. And with that,
Anybody got any questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
A couple of things, as you guys just heard that presentation about a comprehensive plan. I believe, if you remember when I was hired, one of the things I said I'd like to do initially was to work on an economic development strategic, at least update of a plan. Having an updated comprehensive plan, it would be the bedrock upon which you would do some kind of an economic development strategic plan. You can see a lot of the economic development issues that we would be discussing in any type of plan are addressed, at least in terms of researching and understanding what it means to our community in a comprehensive plan. And so this is an important first step if we're going to move in that direction. And the second thought I have is one of these specific items in this comprehensive plan that was mentioned by Jenna is the housing issue. I think everybody in here understands that we have some housing issues, at least availability issues at different levels in the market in our community, and that it's probably should be a priority of ours to look at those and address those adequately. And this is, again, another chance for us to take that first step in doing so. In every community, it's important to have a good updated strategic plan, and I believe ours might be the oldest in the metro area, or at least close to it.
yes, our last comprehensive plan was done in 1992, which is the oldest in the KC metro area.
So it's overdue.
Any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Item B, proposed rental inspection program presented by Matt Wright.
Yep. So we did have a draft rental inspection program that came before the council back in 2019, and it did not move forward. We are currently preparing a new draft ordinance for the rental inspection program to bring that back for the city council for your review and consideration. It will likely still be a few months before that makes it to council, but what is being passed around right now is a one-page just general information that we would like to provide post on our website and provide to the general public tomorrow for their information. What we plan to do with this handout is this is just a quick summary of the program. It's not the draft ordinance, but it does hit the highlights. And what we plan to do with that is to have a community meeting sometime in early mid-December to review the program in more detail, and then bring that back to the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee for their review and recommendation. Based on their recommendations, there may be more than one meeting required with them just to revise the ordinance based on those recommendations. Once we have a final recommendation from them to proceed, we will then bring that forward to City Council for review and a decision on that. So our goal is to get that before Council, hopefully by late winter, early spring, with the goal of having an effective date of October 1st, 2023 for the program. But again, this is preliminary. Most of this is the same of what was proposed in 2019. We've made some updates based on some of the changes that other area cities have made over the last 3 years as more rental inspection programs have been added and kind of perfected over the last 3 years. And once we do have the meeting date, time, and location for the community meeting, we will release that. That is invited, everyone in the public is encouraged to attend that, including landlords and tenants, as well as provide any feedback that they may have on the program.
Any questions?
I was here. I'm the only one around, so. I thought we had changed that every unit had to be inspected, not just 10% too. Because why would someone cherry pick their best units to be inspected every 2 years and not all of them?
So we did take that. Most of this program is modeled off of the City of Independence, and we did meet with them to review their program. So all rental units that have 4 or fewer units in a building are required to have all their units inspected. This is more for the larger apartment buildings. And the way that Independence handles that is you can't have the same unit inspected over and over. So every 2 years you have to pick a different unit within that building. But that is certainly something that, as we draft this, that we can look at if there are concerns.
Which, I mean, I go back to what we discussed 3 years ago now. You know, if we have a bad landlord that owns multiple units, you know, I don't know anybody around here, but, you know, they can basically have us come in and check 4 units and then they all pass, but there's 10 units that wouldn't pass that we can't get into because they're not allowing us. So I thought we had changed that in our ordinance to every unit, but, and I'd have to go back and look at our notes 3 years ago.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that again. Matt did mention this is a preliminary. This is not by any stretch even set. I mean, even the percentages or anything like that. What the intention is that when we do this public meeting and we invite the landlord participation, we can try and find a middle ground that works. That's fair, not just for the public, but also fair for the landlords. And realizing that there's probably not a perfect solution to this. From either perspective, and so we're going to try to find the best middle ground that we can, take as much feedback as we possibly can, see if we can find something that is agreeable to as many people as possible, and move forward with something like that, and then we can tweak it in the future depending on how successful or unsuccessful it is. At this point, we don't have any program, so those landlords that you're talking about don't have any incentive to provide an updated property or a safe property. So.
Well, and this was turned down 3 years ago for the same stuff that's probably going to get turned down again if we don't change it, because you have tenants that come to us and say, are they going to come in your house?
Right.
And I said, no, they're not coming in my house because I own mine.
Right.
And they said, I got a good landlord. I've been in there 8 years. I don't want you in my house.
Right. Understood. And that's,
so
again, that's why
we would pass it if we do it when there's not rented. So if there's no rental in it, so whenever they turn on the water, hey, that's when they got to have an inspection to have that water turned on. So do it when it's unoccupied and not occupied, so we can make sure it's safe before it goes in there.
Well, and that seems like a reasonable, stance at this point. Again, we'd like to just take in as much of that feedback as we can.
We have good landlords. I don't want to sit there and intrude on someone's property that is happy with their landlord, and they've been in there 8 to 9 years, and that was one of the biggest things that we got was from tenants, not from, the landlord association don't want to spend $50, but it's being passed on to the tenant also. It's not,
right.
They're not eating it. So I'm just going to go tell you what we talked about 3 years ago,
Well, and we could play devil's advocate on this all day long. I could say just as easily that, well, what if there's someone that's been renting a place that's substandard for 3 or 4 years, but that's all that they can afford, and they're not going to want someone to go and inspect that either. So, I mean, it's the same type of, I mean, there are going to be issues on both sides of this, and
But I mean, I'll just let you know, I think it was a 7-2 vote last time too.
Understood.
So, I mean, it wasn't anywhere close that anybody that wanted this because of the information that we got from the tenants more than it was from the landlord, so.
we're not rushing this. We're not going to try to force anything on anybody. We're just going to try and get as much feedback as we can and see if there is a middle ground that we can craft a policy that works for everybody.
Said I'll support it if we do it when it's unoccupied, but if it's occupied, unless we're called in, I won't support it, just up front.
Fair enough.
Go ahead, Brett.
No, I think it's been, how soon do you want to start looking at this, doing this, development?
So we plan on having a meeting in December, community meeting, and then likely January, we'll have it before the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee.
Oh, so you're moving relatively soon. It's not a year process.
No, this should not take that long. It shouldn't take a whole year to get this drafted.
We want to leave a couple of months to make sure we get it prepared for rollout after it's already been adopted, whatever the policy is, if assuming there is one that's adopted. But we also have a few months to play with in case there are issues that need to be addressed, and we need to try to work those out.
I wasn't here 3 years ago, so I can't respond to that. But I'd be interested in hearing the feedback from the community and the businesses and those kind of things. So
Sure. We are too.
Allison.
Just since this is kind of an introduction and generally gathering feedback, I agree with Councilmember Clark that if the timing and the trigger could be water service changes and inspecting a vacant unit or a newly rented unit, I think that would probably be easiest on folks. Playing devil's advocate, maybe the landlord keeps the water in their name and just bills it back to the renter. There's tricks for that, so I'm sure you folks will think through that. A couple other points I would just point out is kind of establishing the cost of an inspection. I know it says there'll be a list of approved vendors, but having a sense of what that cost would be. An option for renters to request an inspection of their unit, even if it's occupied. I've seen that feedback online too, that, folks who can't afford other accommodations are stuck and they have no recourse for that. So it makes sense that if you live there and you think it's substandard, my question then becomes what happens in a failed inspection. At the back here, it says you can't occupy a unit until there's an approved inspection. So that's going to create some, instability for folks who are in a house. And that's just the thoughts I have right now.
I would mention that if someone wants us to inspect their property, whether it's an owner or a renter now, they can get that.
Okay.
And so a renter could request that we go look at their property.
As like a code violation,
For code violations and whatnot. But again, that's a slippery slope that you have to be careful with, because then the folks that can't afford a place, then the landlord could come back and say, well, I'm going to have to raise your rent because we have to bring this up to code, and maybe that's okay. I'm just pointing out some of the pitfalls.
I mean, I see that online now too, people that own their own home and they'll post in community groups that they've got a plumbing issue and they need someone to come fix it, and by definition their house is uninhabitable,
Right.
I mean, thank you.
I think, Councilman Lawson, I think last time it was $75 for the rental inspection from a third party.
Anybody have an idea if that's in the ballpark? It wasn't Kansas City's program, which they executed, was $20 a unit?
Yeah, we'll work that out with whatever
Yeah, I
the
think-
market bears out. I don't know at this point.
I think Independence was around 50.
50 to
50 to 75, I think, if I remember right.
Thank you.
You got any?
So, this won't be classified as a dichotomy, either is or is not. Will there be like middle grounds? Because the one thing that says that there would be, if they failed inspection, they can't live there. But what happens if we have a middle grounds to where, you got problems, but it's inhabitable, so you can stay here, and those are the kind of things that I would like to see also included in that, is that.
This is all good feedback.
Anybody else? Angela, you're quiet.
I'm good. I'm looking forward to the meeting.
All right, I'm just making sure.
Thanks.
All right. Item C, Dog Park Roadway, Greg Rokos.
So as one of the things that we're doing with North Point Apartments is there's a dog park being built, and it's a public-private partnership in the construction of it. And so part of the construction of it is they have graded the road out. It's our responsibility to treat the dirt and then to pave it. And so we'll be coming with a contract to pave that Dog Park Road at the next meeting.
Can you,
Go ahead.
where is it located?
Right across from Menards.
By the dental place.
I don't know if Angela can hear him.
It's by the dental facility, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear.
Aspen.
East of the dental, Aspen.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Is that the name, Dog Park Road?
I do not, it's an entrance, so there's not actually a road name.
Is that just a parking lot street? I mean, is that what,
It's
it looks
just
like
a-
a street, but
It's just a little driveway down to some parking spots.
we need to name it.
You turn in at that light and go left, right?
That's correct.
Go right to the dental and left to the dog road.
We've named it the barking lot.
The parking lot, I like
Parking
it.
lot, all right. All right, anybody else? Item D, no parking, Traditions Multifamily, presented by Greg Rokos.
So in the Traditions neighborhood, inside the area that has the multifamily, there's already some parking, no parking signs on one side of the road and a couple streets. However, there's actually no ordinance that supports those, and we're going to finish putting no parking signs throughout the area in front of the multifamily, so there's only parking on one side of the street. That'll help traffic flow quite a bit through that area. So we'll be bringing that ordinance for you next time.
Will it,
Go ahead.
will it be specific to Traditions, or is it gonna be an ordinance that citywide?
It's specific to those exact
Has to be
streets.
those streets.
Yeah.
The cops can write tickets.
Yeah, we have to by ordinance or essentially identify where the no parking areas are specifically. We can't just do a blanket, put up no parking where you want to, and then we'll enforce it. So we have to be very strategic about that.
I actually, I mean, talking about streets, like, I noticed that the outer road in front of the hospital went from 45 to 35 in the last year or so, and I don't remember us ever changing the ordinance on that.
Well, right now, the outer road that's in front of the hospital is under the control of MoDOT.
Until Springdale? So you're saying we can't write a ticket there?
You can write a ticket there, but they set the speed limit right now.
So it's not a city ordinance?
MoDOT
It was
on their
45
routes,
and now there's signs that say 35, so, I mean,
I'd have to look up what the city ordinance is, but MoDOT sets what the speed is. So if they change the speed, it goes by the state ordinance. You can ask.
It's just
Steve.
like I-49 or any other state highway. We don't have the authority to.
I just
set
always
those,
thought we
yeah.
had to set an ordinance to change the speed limit to be able to write a ticket.
That is correct for city streets. For MoDOT Highway, you adopting an ordinance stating what the speed limit is would be legally redundant, since the city does not have the authority in and of itself to even say what the speed limit is on MoDOT right away.
'Cause,
So,
of course, I always think it's 45, and I noticed a couple months ago that it's 35 now. I'm like going, oh.
the key here is the chief of police is sitting behind me, Councilmember Clark.
Did you get a ticket? Is that
Hey.
how you found out?
I'm not, no, I didn't get a ticket, but
We're checking into it.
I just like, we never changed that speed limit.
Go ahead.
Just follow up on, speaking of traditions, did Evergy give you a timeline for the temporary light at Sycamore and Mullen?
They haven't given me a timeline for that one yet. They're still working on the design of how they're bringing power to it, but they have started putting the streetlights in Autumn Ridge and Traditions.
Okay,
Well, I don't know if they started Traditions yet, but they're headed that way to put them all in.
okay.
Anybody else? Item E, proposed water line contract.
So as I've told most of you that I hadn't planned on bidding any more projects this year, But we received an unsolicited proposal from one of our contractors. They have several crews that are finishing up on different projects throughout the Kansas City area, and they like to keep them employed through the winter. And so they have proposed to do a substantial amount of water line work for us. I told them that there's certain problems and limitations that I have. One of them being that we're not going to issue bonds until January, so we probably wouldn't have any cash to be able to pay them until January or February. So their proposal to us was to replace water lines in December and January, and we would not have to pay them until we received the bond payments. Now, they proposed doing it through a time and materials contract is something that we're not comfortable with. So we're actually receiving several sets of plans, hopefully later this week. We're going to give them to all of our on-call contractors and let them all bid it with those provisions in it, saying that if you are willing to basically build these water lines, complete the project in the next 60 to 90 days, and not bill us until February, that we'd consider doing a contract with you. So I know it's a little bit different than we normally do business, but it would still be a bid job, and the lowest bidder would get the work. It'd be a great advantage for the city. It would be a great kickoff to us getting more water lines done throughout the winter.
So what bonds did we do back in June? I thought that was water. Is that street that we did then?
We did street bonds then. And so we're going to sell the water bonds starting in January.
Okay.
Any questions?
Is there any interest on this money?
From the contractor? No, that's one of the things is they have to completely float it with no cost to us.
Okay.
Their main interest is keeping their people employed so they don't lose them, because if they don't have them employed through the winter, by the time spring comes, they might have jobs with other contractors, other places, and they won't get them back. So if they can keep them employed and keep them working, it's much to their advantage.
Can I ask you a question about a contract that you're working on? How's Cambridge? Is that going to be done in the next year or before the end of the year?
Yeah, so the spire got out of the way. We've removed the culvert. The mud mat has been placed into the culvert, which is basically a concrete temporary floor. It's permanently there. And then they build the culvert on top of it. And so they're going to start tying the steel. There's 3 phases of tying the steel and pouring concrete. The goal is to try to have it completely poured before Thanksgiving. And then after Thanksgiving, do the dirt work to get it up to grade, and then get a road surface on it so we can get it reopened before Christmas.
Yep. Thank you.
That's weather permitting, obviously.
Item F, Home Depot Fire Prevention Grant. Mr. Fire Chief.
This is a grant that actually Home Depot approached our fire marshal with, that they had money sitting that nobody else claimed. So they're already ready. They have it sitting there. We just need to make sure we get approval. So that'll be coming to you in the next meeting. It's basically going to be for smoke detectors, some carbon monoxide alarms, and fire extinguishers. So the plan will be that we'll choose some specific areas to canvass, and this then includes Home Depot employees as well. They do it as an outreach, and so we would go out with door hangers and either present and hang and furnish folks with these, or supply them with the information to contact us so that it can be taken care of later.
Is there time sensitive to this? Is this something we could approve tonight?
Well, there's nothing in writing to approve, so I don't think it's that time sensitive.
To get it going?
They're there and they just wanted to give it to us. We just said, hey, you're just gonna have to wait. So I think we're fine. We'll get something written up for the next meeting, and that'll give them time to have their plan up and ready to go.
Okay.
So I don't remember the amount of the grant, but there wasn't any matching or any obligation on our part.
Just accepting it, all right. Well, if we need to do it tonight, we can do it tonight if you want, but if you're okay waiting, we're good. Any questions? Seeing none. Item G, recreational marijuana update by...
Yeah, I'll take this one on. This presentation is a significantly streamlined version of the presentation that I and another attorney in my office gave for MML. If you have any questions or you think that the presentation needs some more stuff on it, that presentation and the video of it is available on the MML website. We're just going to briefly go over some stuff. I'm going to try and make this quick enough that Greg doesn't start throwing things at me because I'm lasting too long. But so the first thing we're going to do is hit a general overview of Amendment 3, including the timeline for implementation of Amendment 3. Obviously, it is 6:54. No votes are going to be counted until 7, so we're not 100% certain whether or not it's going to pass. But when you see the timelines, you'll notice that there are some very quick turnaround here. So we decided that it was best to give the council an update on this tonight, because at future council meetings, like council meetings in December, the council meeting in December, you will be asked to probably make some decisions at that point. Next, we'll go over what the new types of facilities, the identification cards, the regulatory authority that the city has, and then the taxation of adult use marijuana. It's been, on the agenda, it's called recreational marijuana. The drafters of the amendment specifically only call it adult use marijuana. And we'll see that here. The general purpose of Amendment 3 is essentially to decriminalize the use, consumption, and possession of marijuana by persons 21 years of age older, and to regulate the commercial activity involved in the production of adult use marijuana. Now, the key here is 21 years or older. It is essentially it is to be treated similar to liquor, but just significantly more regulated, and regulated via the Constitution instead of statutorily. What is not the purpose of Amendment 3 is to allow for the public use, driving while intoxicated, use in the workplace, or the use of marijuana by people 21 years of age. And here's kind of the key, and one of the reasons why we're giving this presentation tonight is the timeline. So here, if it is approved tonight, the effective date of the amendment will be 30 days, so December 8th. By January 7th, 2023, DHSS has to start making personal cultivation cards available to people 21 years of age or older, and this is the key here. February 6th, 2023 is the deadline for DHSS to approve conversion requests, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Then we have January 6th is when micro business facility licenses become available. September 24th is when they start accepting. October 4th is the first group of micro business facilities. So if we see here, October 4th is the first time that a new facility will be able to open. So there will be no new facilities, no new medical or anything like that during this time period. June 30th is the second group or tranche of micro business licenses, and then April 4th, 2025 is the final group. And then there's a question mark because, as I said in the MML webinar, this is a poorly drafted piece of legislation, that there is some confusion due to missed cross-references and some other stuff. So that's why it's a question mark, but 548 days after DHSS begins issuing licenses for marijuana facilities is when they can start issuing non-conversion, non-micro business licenses. So the amendment creates two new types of what they classify as marijuana facilities. Under now the Constitution, if this is approved, there are two types of just facilities: medical facilities, marijuana facilities. Marijuana facilities include comprehensive marijuana facilities and micro business facilities. And then there's testing facilities and all these random ones that are not really going to get used.
So when you're on the facilities here, the medicinal side, they only allow like 24 in every congressional district. Is this?
Well, that's coming up.
Okay.
Our comprehensive facilities, our cultivation facilities, dispensary facilities, and infused products manufacturing facilities. The drafters of the amendment like using good adjectives, so you can pretty much figure out what each one of those facilities does just by the name. Cultivation facilities cultivate, dispensary facilities dispense, marijuana infused products manufacturing facilities create marijuana infused products.
So where they make brownies?
That's where they make the brownies. They're the only one authorized to do that. To get to Councilmember Clark's point, and another, what I would view as a potential mistake in the amendment is that they changed the number of licenses in two different sections, and in those two different sections it doesn't quite track exactly. So it's unclear whether or not the amendment authorizes an entire new subset of dispensary facilities and cultivation facilities and infused products facilities, or whether or not that number has to just be the ones that were already approved under medical marijuana. So for example, Councilmember Clark brought up the 24 per congressional district. That is the number of dispensary facilities that are authorized. Under the amendment, it's not clear if there will be a new 24 marijuana dispensary facilities, the comprehensive ones, or if there just has to be a total of 24 comprehensive and 24 medical dispensary facilities. Now, the key for all of these currently existing medical facilities is the ability to convert their license. The amendment grants all current holders of medical marijuana licenses to convert those licenses to comprehensive facility licenses. And as you'll note, December 8th is when they can start applying for that. And DHSS has 60 days from December 8th, if they apply on the day that they can, to approve. If they do not approve or state any reason or deny, it is deemed approved, which is something that I don't think any person that works in government ever wants to see something deemed approved just because you missed a timeline. A medical marijuana facility can convert to a comprehensive facility as long as they are in good standing with DHSS and the license is either in the exact same location as their current license, or if the municipality prohibits comprehensive licenses, if it's in the same congressional district and the building meets all the requirements of DHSS. So this is one of the reasons why we're here tonight. As you can see, 60 days from December 8th would be February 6th. So under your guys' current meeting schedule, that would only be 4 including the budget meeting, but 3 city council meetings before a comprehensive medical marijuana facility could open in the city of Belton. The other type of licenses are micro business facilities. A lot of text here, so I'll just, again, briefly describe it. We have dispensary facilities and wholesale facilities. They do what they can. They dispense and they create. One of the keys here, and I, again, not sure if this is a drafting error or if the creators of the amendment decided to put all of these businesses behind the 8 ball, but they are not allowed under the amendment to interact with comprehensive facilities or medical facilities. So if you are a micro business dispensary facility, you can only buy the marijuana that you intend to sell at retail from another micro business wholesale facility, which would essentially mean, as if everybody remembers the implementation of medical marijuana, the dispensaries didn't open on time at all because they didn't have product to sell yet. So you would think, since we already have cultivation facilities in the state, that they would allow the micro business dispensary facilities to open at that October 4th deadline so that then they could start selling at that point. But that does not look like it will occur. So those dispensary facilities, the micro business ones, they can open, technically get their licenses granted by October 4th, 2023, but I doubt that you'd ever have one actually selling anything until 2024 at the earliest. I meant to touch on this earlier, but the reason for the micro business facilities is essentially it's a way by DHSS to try and make the marijuana market available to people from more low income areas. To get a comprehensive or a medical license you're talking about easily spending close to $250,000 just on the soft costs, just on the legal, the engineering, all that sort of stuff. So for micro businesses, there are certain qualifications that I didn't include but are on the MML one. Most of them are directed at low income areas. There is one that is people are going to be able to drive a truck through, and it's if you live or graduated from a school district that was unaccredited for 3 of the past 5 years. So I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I technically qualify and could get a micro business facility license. So could everybody that lives in the Hickman Mill School District, and I do believe the St. Louis School District as well. The personal cultivation cards, if we think back to medical marijuana, it was required that you receive a card to purchase medical marijuana. Under the amendment, DHSS and local authorities are specifically prohibited from requiring a purchase identification card. All a person has to show to buy adult use marijuana, if the amendment passes, is just your driver's license. But if you want to cultivate, you are required to apply for and receive a cultivation license, which has the limits on the number of plants you can grow, which is essentially 18, broken out into different categories, and then also that they be done in a closed space that is not viewable from the public right away. Oh, and also, there's a limit of 12 total flowering plants per residence. So if you end up with 4 people living in a house together, they all can't grow. You'd have to, 2 of them would have to pick not to. So that was a big issue that came up in Colorado and in some of the places that had earlier adoption of this, is that entire houses would essentially become grow facilities. The regulatory authority of cities, we have, under this amendment, there is a slight change from the medical marijuana. You do have the authority to ban marijuana dispensary facilities. So that would be your comprehensive dispensary facilities and your micro business dispensary facilities. The separation requirements are the same from medical marijuana. You have the ability to adopt time, place, manner restrictions, but those cannot be unduly burdensome to the reasonably prudent business person, which still not 100% certain what that even means. Prohibiting marijuana dispensary facilities. Under the amendment, cities are directly authorized to ban and prohibit the operation of micro-business dispensary facilities and comprehensive marijuana dispensary facilities. Another key here, that does not mean that you can ban medical facilities or any of the other types of facilities. So it's strictly limited to our micro-business dispensary facilities and comprehensive facilities. The process is pretty typical, but it's either the referral of a ballot question by you all to the voters or a citizen petition. This is the part that really made me laugh the most, but you can only put it on the ballot of a presidential election year.
So going back, you said a medicinal marijuana store can
Convert.
switch,
Mm-hmm.
but then you just said we can ban them.
But that ban could not become effective until November of 2024.
But we can't ban a medicinal store, but we can ban, so if they change to a regular store, then we can just kick them out?
If the citizens approve of the ballot question that you would
Oh,
have to put
okay.
before them in November of 2024.
Gotcha.
And they drafted the ballot question for this, and it's the typical City of Greenacre prohibit blah blah blah, and then the last sentence, and forego any additional related local tax revenue. So at that presidential election, where you could ask people to ban the dispensary facilities, the voters would be looking at the ballot question, and specifically the end of it would be, wait, these people have been asking me for a use tax for 3 times now, and they want to now forego some tax revenue from some people smoking marijuana? I don't think you should ban it. The other thing is that the approval threshold is 60%. It is not a simple majority. It would need to be at 60%. A ban may be repealed at any time following the same process, except the repeal is only a simple majority.
Do they have to wait till the presidential?
No.
Oh, shit.
Oh, they don't, it's everything on that side.
It's fun, isn't it? The separation requirements, I don't think any members of the council were on when we adopted our medical marijuana stuff. But so from the medical marijuana, there was a 1,000-foot separation requirement for church, schools, and daycares. Here, it is the same. Now, under the original amendment, it just said 1,000-foot separation. It did not say how you measure the 1,000-foot separation. DHSS adopted certain rules that I argued strongly against multiple times on phone calls with them. But here, the drafters of this amendment have decided to make those demarcation points a constitutional provision and no longer just a rule of DHSS. Now, the issue with the demarcation points is that they are confusing. They are based on whether or not the facility or the protected facility is freestanding or by itself. And then it also is not as the crow flies. It is the points that can be lawfully traveled by foot. So, when this was originally brought up in 2019, my point to them was that technically, if you have an ordinance that prohibits jaywalking, you could end up with a facility directly across the street from a church or a daycare or school, because you can't just cross the road. You would have to walk down the road to a light, cross at the crosswalk, and then walk all the way back up. So this kind of issue is no longer hopefully at some point we can get around that. It is now, if the amendment passes, it is a constitutional provision that could only be amended via vote of the people. Now, as I said, you can ban facilities, but if you decide not to ban facilities, you cannot prohibit them through an express or implied prohibition. But you can adopt time, place, and manner restrictions. Those time, place, and manner restrictions, again, just can't be unduly burdensome. When this amendment, or when the medical marijuana amendment came up, there was no litigation that got to be a reported case. We did represent the City of Independence at the circuit court level, but the City of Independence just decided to amend their code and not deal with the litigation. So there is no court interpretation of what unduly burdensome means. So the drafters of Amendment 3 decided instead to create their own definition of unduly burdensome that was taken from similar adult use and medical marijuana legislation across the country. It is this unduly burdensome, or it is this reasonable prudent standard, which essentially means that your regulations would cause such a high investment of money, time, or any other resource or asset that a reasonably prudent business person would not operate the marijuana facility. Now, I don't know what a reasonably prudent business person looks like. I don't think I'm one, so I'd probably be a bad test. But that exact language, reasonably prudent business person, is in, I think it's 9 different states, and the territory of Guam also has it. And it appears to be cribbed directly from ERISA litigation. There are no currently reported cases from any of those other states as to what a reasonably prudent business person means in the context of marijuana facility. So that is another question that the only way to, the dispute resolution process and the interpretation of constitutional provision process in the state of Missouri is through the courts. And at this point, there is no court decisions on that. Now comes the part that will actually be a positive for you guys and for hopefully a lot of people. But under medical marijuana, you could not have an additional tax specifically on medical marijuana. On recreational marijuana, you can, and it's at 3%. The election to approve this can occur at any municipal, county, or state general, primary, or special election, and it's collected just like any other sales tax. So that's another reason that we're doing this today, because there are 3 medical marijuana facilities in the city of Belton. All 3 of those could convert to comprehensive facilities by February 8th. The next election where you could ask the voters if they wanted to impose an additional sales tax on adult use marijuana would be April. The certification for questions for the April election is January 24th, which is the date of your second meeting in January. So we would have to have, if Amendment 3 passes, and if the city council would like to add or ask the voters if they would like to have an additional sales tax on adult use marijuana, we would have to have the first reading of that ordinance at the first meeting in December. And that's it. Are there any questions? I tried to go, Greg, did I make good time?
Not Greg time, but
You
go
said-
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said something about public use. Right now, I assume if you're, I don't know how the police decide, but if you're impaired by marijuana in an accident, then that's an additional burden on you. But right now, there's laws against public alcohol consumption. Are there going to be law, or can we pass laws about public marijuana outside of facilities? I mean,
Yes,
we're going to
you
have
could.
people walking up and down the sidewalks smoking marijuana.
Yes, and that is specifically already prohibited by the Constitution at an outset.
Oh, okay.
You do have the authority to allow it, which I had a great final exam question, I thought, when I did the presentation for MML that kind of talks about those rules. But from the outset, under the amendment, public consumption is prohibited. Now, I've already talked to Chief Lyons about this and other police chiefs across the state. The biggest change that you guys will see in your code books is the actual policing portion of medical marijuana, and we'll be trying to bring those changes back and would most likely include a specific ordinance prohibiting the public use of marijuana in the city of Belton.
Okay.
Any thoughts, concerns? If we so chose to tax it, do we need to have that next meeting?
It would have to be at the meeting on December 10th, or there could be a double read at the first meeting in January.
I'd like to start to have that conversation as much as we can tonight
What's
to see what everybody's
thought on
druthers
that?
are, so we can start working toward that if that's the case.
Patrick, did you say that, is there already a tax imposed on it, and this would just be an additional that we wanted, or?
So it is already subject to sales tax. Medical marijuana is already subject to sales tax because medical marijuana is not a prescription. It is a recommendation. But the medical marijuana amendment specifically prohibited additional marijuana specific sales taxes. In this constitutional amendment, they have specifically allowed an additional 3% tax on the adult use, so non-medical, the recreational use of marijuana.
3%.
3%, and I think by the December 10th meeting, staff, we might be able to back into a kind of a really ballpark figure on what that would be from a revenue generation standpoint. It's not going to be perfect because obviously there are significantly less people holding cultivation cards than just the general public itself. But it could generate some sales tax that could be utilized for a public purpose.
But they have to convert over from a municipal store to a regular store before you can actually tax them too, though, right?
And I would hazard to guess that no reasonably prudent business person would not decide to convert their medical license to a comprehensive license at this point. Due to the fact that they cannot be prohibited until at the earliest December, 30 days after the election in November of 2024.
So they could run 2 years, where right now they could run forever because that's what the statute is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know this, but do we have a city-specific tax on alcohol?
No.
No, because it's not there for. You are a charter city, so you do have some additional taxing authority, but there is no constitutional amendment that specifically authorizes you to have an additional tax on intoxicating liquor, and there's no statute that authorizes that either. But you do have a higher business license fee on liquor stores and liquor licenses than on general.
Okay.
Angela, go ahead.
So if we had a comprehensive one, would that tax only apply to people that were getting product there that didn't have a medical license, or would it apply for everyone that went there?
It would not apply to people utilizing it for a medical purpose with their medical marijuana card. So it would only be the people 21 years of age who do not have a medical marijuana personal identification card.
Do we have a city-specific tax for tobacco?
We did have a cigarette tax.
No.
Okay, just curious. I don't
Are we
buy
allowed to
those
have
things.
one?
Are we allowed to have one?
Well, I know that some cities used to have them on vending machines and stuff like that
I
within
think
the
vending
city.
machines are illegal nowadays.
Yeah. But there are, like, for example, you do have a specific tax on hotels that is not applicable to other similarly situated businesses. You do have a specific tax on utilities that is
We
not.
can tax gas.
You tax gas differently than you tax other products.
Okay.
But it has to have a constitutional, the state has to allow you to do it individually, even if they're a charter, they still gotta allow us to do it, right?
There's legal arguments both ways to that point.
I'm still a little hazy on this. If you sold it, wouldn't you still be subject to whatever our tax rate is as a
Yes,
sale?
so this is a 3% additional tax.
Oh,
They give us
So-
6.25%.
All right.
So for example, I do believe that one of your dispensary facilities is located in by the Price Chopper, if I'm not mistaken.
CID.
So that is a CID, so they would have a 4% higher tax rate than
Then the
another
sale.
product that was
Okay.
purchased.
Do you want to entertain that, Perry? Do you want them to bring that back?
I think we ought to talk about it.
Can we go higher?
No, you cannot go higher.
So 3%'s all.
3%, it is up to 3. You could go lower. You can't go higher, though.
Go ahead, Angela.
Is there any way at all to get an idea of what other cities are thinking about or planning? Because if we happen to impose a 3% and no one else does, Grandview and Raymore are a quick hop step away. That could take money away from us.
Can we state it up, we were gonna impose it up to 3%?
I will say, based on the questions that I received after the MML presentation, there is no city in this state that has a dispensary that is not going to go and try and impose this tax at the April election.
I mean, I don't even know, do we have revenue figures on our current places right now?
We could potentially back into them, but we would not, again, this is a substantial change because right now there is only 5-point-something% of the Missouri population has a medical card. So only 5% of almost 7 million people could even purchase marijuana at this point. So the sales tax figure would be probably, it'd be lower because now any person over the age of 21 would be able to purchase it instead.
What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
I think we should bring it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tax it if it passes, heck yeah.
Yes. You guys?
So,
I mean, do you know how much more police officers we're gonna need? Come on.
Do other states that it's legal in have tax on most cities?
I will say that there's only one other state in the United States that they have to have statutory authorization to pass taxes in, and that's Michigan. You guys have to have the statutory authorization because of the Hancock Amendment.
Can we get rid of that?
But yes, most places, that is one of the carrots that marijuana proponents typically hold out as a reason to pass it is, we'll let you collect additional tax revenue off of it.
So the tax revenue is supposed to be going to police officers, so how much money are we getting?
What do you mean?
We would get that.
Isn't that what the ad says, that we're gonna?
The 3%, unless limited by the ballot language, would just go to the general fund.
No, I'm talking about the state taxes. They said that if you pass this, it's going to VA funding for health and for more police officers. So how much are we getting off of that?
I don't believe at this point that, so if you look at the amendment, it's not a you get this, it's a trickle down. It's a waterfall when it comes to those taxes. And I don't believe that they've
So
ever.
it's a lie, is what you're saying.
I don't believe that they have ever collected enough sales tax revenue to go past the VA.
Well, that's why I'm like, well, the veterans already get VA, so I don't understand all this.
So if you look at, again, our only figures are from medical, and medical, due to the limited number of potential customers, is going to be significantly lower than just a full open adult use 21 years and older. But at this point, the sales tax revenues from medical are somewhat lower than what was estimated.
Somewhat.
All right. I would say, go
I
ahead.
feel the whole point of it becoming legal is for the tax advantage.
Right.
So you might as well take
Tax it.
advantage.
And I will note also that the city of Belton is in a unique position in that there are 3 dispensaries in the city of Belton.
I'd say bring it, put it on this next meeting, or December.
We can fund tourism.
December the
And again, there is,
13th.
so I didn't say this during my presentation, but there is no ballot language for what the sales tax ballot has to look like. That is incredibly unusual.
Yeah,
That
really.
there are no other taxes that I know that you are authorized to impose or levy that do not have proposed ballot language. So there is apparently some greater leeway in the council's ability to draft ballot language here.
Perfect. Go ahead.
I want to state that I have never inhaled marijuana. Also, I would actually like to see what other cities around us are going to do on the taxation too.
I think kind of philosophically, if cigarettes and alcohol don't carry the additional tax burden. I don't know why we would necessarily want to do that.
Because
And
we're
also-
not allowed? I mean.
Sure, there is already tax advantages if this passes baked in. Okay. Thanks.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
That was a quality dad joke. I'll give you credit.
What else? All right. No, I'm not even gonna do it. I'm not even gonna do it.
So,
Item-
for us to be able to do this, the 3%, though, the citizens have to vote on it.
Yes, this tax is subject to the typical procedures of the Hancock Amendment. So ultimately, whatever you guys decide, it's just putting it before the voters. It is not in and of itself imposing the 3%. It is leaving the
Let
question to the
yeah,
voters to
let them
decide.
So
Them
bring it,
decide.
put it on the December 13th meeting and we'll let them decide. All right, item H, Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Division 9, People Engagement Division.
So the title, People Engagement Department, was just as a working title. It's not probably what we're going to go. It's essentially the HR director creating that department so that we actually have a director over department rather than just as part of the, because currently HR is underneath finance technically, and to get the proper use of an HR position or department, we need to make sure that it has some autonomy from the rest of the organization. And so we will be bringing to you the code to essentially do that.
Any thoughts, questions?
What other types of positions would be seated under that, like payroll and?
Maybe I mean, benefits and payroll could potentially be HR underneath HR. They could also, I've seen it both ways. I've seen them under finance, and that could remain under finance. I mean, we haven't worked that out specifically, but that's about it as far as the existing, other than just the regular HR functions that you would consider human resources.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Do y'all care what we call it? I mean, because I mean, we've thrown some ideas around, like, employee,
I don't.
whatever.
I'm just glad we have her. So,
We'll give her a cool title then. Thanks.
anybody else? All right, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I forgot to say something under my communications. I am doing the State of the City address November the 15th, next Tuesday at 11:30 at Memorial Station. So if anybody wants to attend and hear my great speech that I didn't write,
Somebody put that out there, didn't they?
I helped Jordan Lee helped me write my speech, so it's all good. So November 15th at 11:30 at Memorial Station. So
What time?
11:30. That being said, I'd entertain a motion to enter an executive session to discuss matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.021.1 to discuss matters pertaining to leasing, purchase, and sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610.021.2, and to discuss matters pertaining to individual identifiable personal records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.13, and this record be closed and the meeting adjourned from there.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmember Richardson?
Aye.
Howell?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Kraft?
Aye.
Goff?
Aye.
White?
Aye.
Lawson?
Aye.
Mayor Larkey?
Aye. Motion carries. We're in